Welcome to the 𝗠𝗿𝗄𝗀 podcast. Ain't another place that has got more bombast. Romp past your mom, dad's listening to Tomcats, talking everything that make you sad. We don't want that. We're here to make you smile. Put your mind at ease. Peace, love, and bloom, and always praise Keanu Reeves. This what we about. This some weeding now. We'll talk until we can't no more, and then we peacing out. All right, let's go. 𝗠𝗿𝗄𝗀 podcast. It's the 𝗠𝗿𝗄𝗀 podcast. 𝗠𝗿𝗄𝗀 podcast. It's the 𝗠𝗿𝗄𝗀 podcast. 𝗠𝗿𝗄𝗀 podcast. 𝗠𝗿𝗄𝗀 podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome in to the 𝗠𝗿𝗄𝗀 podcast. Today, we continue our director's spotlight for one Martin Scorsese with his 2002 film, Gangs of New York. This one was released on December 20th, 2002. It was written for the screen by Steven Zaillian, Kenneth Lonergan, and Jay Cox. Nice. I am 𝗦𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. I'm joined by Joseph George. What's up, homie?
Oh, what up, what up? Always a pleasure to be here.
Oh, and it's always a pleasure to have you. And back like he never left, our first guest for the director's spotlight, my father, Justin Robertson. What's up, Dad?
Guys, how we doing? Thanks for having me again. Happy to be here.
Oh, of course. Happy to have you. Whenever I should say, Joe, I know that you're okay with me just kind of deciding what we do. You're always down for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever Killers of the Flower Moon was like, yep, that's coming out, we started doing the director's spotlights. One of my top priorities was getting around to Gangs of New York because I'd never seen it. And for years, you've been telling me that it's a goodie. So
yeah, it's one I always really enjoyed, and I hadn't seen it in, probably at least 5 years. So it was good to revisit.
Good. Yeah, so you were obviously the first choice for the Gangs of New York. How long do you remember seeing this when it came out, or how long do you think the relationship goes back with this movie for you?
At that point, you were a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't doing a lot of movies out at the movies.
Fair. Yeah.
So we probably, I'm sure I watched it the moment I could without leaving the house. So whether that be like when it was on cable or, we may have, rented it, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're talking, it was 03-ish.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Hell yeah. I guess is this the first time we've had you on the podcast for a movie that's come out
since you've been alive?
Since I've been alive.
Wow.
Because we did Howard the Duck.
Right.
That was before our time.
It was. What was the other one? Yeah. Oh, Bottle Rocket, which was before.
Oh, right.
Which was before my time as well.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah. So yeah, this is
yeah, we're in the Colton era.
Yeah.
AC. Yeah, after Colton. But Joey, I know this was a first viewing for you. How are you feeling on the other side of it?
Oh man, no, I'm I find myself in two different camps when it comes to Scorsese movies. He has two different types of movies so far, and this is way more of my favorite. I don't know. It's kind of a blend of both of his genre of just kind of gangster movies like Goodfellas and Casino, but kind of set back 100 or so years in the past, and I don't know, just kind of given a story just way over the top. The set bit, like the set design, all this stuff was just like insane. Like, I think I was looking, and there's only one use of CGI in the entire movie, and it's the elephant that's running across the street. And George Lucas was the one who worked on it, and he told Scorsese, he said, like, he built these sets, like the huge wooden. Well, I don't know if the whole thing was built, but they built like a lot of these sets. And George Lucas was like, you can just do this in CGI. And
he was like, I'm actually working on Revenge of the Sith right now.
Yeah. And he eventually
it's nothing but CGI. We've got you've met Jar Jar Binks, right?
Yeah. Scorsese was apparently adamant about not using CGI, but George Lucas convinced him for the elephant.
It's the way of the future, man.
Yeah, I guess so. But no, I loved this. This is one of my favorites from Scorsese so far. It kind of felt like After Hours after I finished watching that one. Just one that took me by surprise, that I didn't think I would like at all. But by the end of the movie, I was like, oh man, no, this just felt like something special, something different that I haven't seen before.
No, yeah, it was a first viewing for me as well, and I actually didn't end up getting around to a second viewing before we recorded here today. So it's the first movie we've done in a while where I'm one viewing deep.
It's rare.
I think it's been since probably Oppenheimer. So it's been a long time, been a while. The Nolan spotlight, you know. But I really enjoyed this movie, and one of the big reasons that I was looking forward to it is this year I've always heard of Daniel Day-Lewis as being one of the greatest actors of all time. You know, There Will Be Blood is a very prolifically considered great movie, one of the best movies of all time, and he delivers one of the best performances of all time. So I watched that earlier this year. I watched another Paul Thomas Anderson movie with him called Phantom Thread, and he's so good in both of those. And to see him here with a young Leo, and them being kind of the headliners. I love young Leo. You know, we've talked about that recently with the top 100, him kind of popping up as a younger man in my list. I was very much so looking forward to this, and it did not disappoint. Far from it.
Did Daniel Day-Lewis just take the screen every time he was on? Like, that dude was electric. I think he's the performance of the movie without a doubt. I thought I was going to go with DiCaprio, for like the, you know, having to go back and forth between these emotions and everything. But I'm like, I don't think there's any justifying a performance better than Daniel Day-Lewis in this one. He was awesome, kind of like Joker level, kind of crazy for a role. It seems like, I don't know. He was into it. Like, I remember, I already was like, man, this dude's just crazy. But whenever, like, the scene where he's celebrating the battle and Leo's about to throw the knife at him and try to kill him, he like gets on top of him and Leo spits blood in his face, and then he just headbutts just like screams, and head keeps going at him. I'm like, oh my god, like this dude is insane. And yeah, his performance was awesome. Like, I was like, every time he was on screen, I'm like, man, this dude sucks, you know, like he is the villain, like the villain of the movie, but goddamn, is he great. He's so fun to watch. Yeah.
Well, awesome. First of all, I'm glad you guys both enjoyed it, because sometimes when it's a movie that I saw that I really liked, then I'm kind of hoping like, oh man, one, I hope it still hits for me. And then I hope like, well, I hope they, you know, I hope I didn't build it up too much. Because, you know, you tend to romanticize on stuff like that. But, he stole the show. I mean, and what's interesting about his character is it's evergreen, you know. I mean, like, even though it was set in the Civil War time, like, really what it boils down to is just a dude that loves the country as he knows it or he wants it to be, and who cannot handle that the world is changing around him. You know what I mean? Like, and that's really the genesis. Yeah, that's really what it is. I mean, it's, you know, it happens every generation, you know.
It's happening right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, you know, that's what I took from it that maybe I hadn't taken from the past. You know, in the past I would just watch it and say, man, what an asshole. And he is. But I think a lot of it's just born out of, he thinks he's right. He thinks it's his country. He thinks it's his America. Things are changing, and he can't handle it. And he doesn't want it to happen. He wants to do everything he can to prevent it, you know, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So, no, yeah, it is a very timeless kind of capturing of the American political landscape, you know, especially in the time that we live in right now. You know, obviously we're not running around with cleavers and, you know, tossing them at people and settling beefs by meeting in the streets 100 deep, you know,
firefighter squads to fight,
to fight. Like, so the fire burns. But, you know, you said he was crazy, and he totally is. But also, like, I think it's probably a relatively accurate portrayal of what a kind of a crazy guy would be in that time period. Like, it was, that's how you handled shit. You stabbed people, and you know what I mean? It wasn't a civilized country somehow.
That's insane to think about.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy to think, like, it's not that long ago. Like, I mean, it is kind of a while, but like
several generations, but in the scheme of history.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. We're kind of taught that it's just like, you know, the founding fathers sitting in the room, you know, making the laws, just doing the thing, and America's just becoming America. But like, is this really what's just going on? You know,
and that was almost 100 years after that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
yeah,
the founding fathers did their thing. I mean, it's during the Civil War, so I mean, you'd think like, so that's a part of history. That's what intrigued me when I watched it when I was younger. Was there was never anything said about how uncivilized society was around. You know, you just kind of think, well, the Civil War is going on. That's the big part of the time, right? I mean, that's a pretty big landmark. And so the fact that this was all going on and Irish people were coming over by the thousands every day and every week, and you know, we're being treated the lowest of low. It just, you know, and I haven't fact checked everything, but I think that a lot of it is, I trust that a lot of it is historically, you know, accurate in terms of just the way it was back then.
Yeah. No, the evolution of racism and oppression in a way where, like, even once upon a time, the quote unquote natives, as Daniel Day-Lewis has claimed, Bill the Butcher, which is already deeply contrived. Like, you are very wrong. You are not the natives. You might have been born here, but you are not the Native Americans. For them to be like, any immigrant, you know, any immigrant, if you are coming off the boat, you are not a true American to him. And that's like
it kind of goes against everything, you know, because you guys were probably taught it too growing up. Oh, America was the melting pot. Everybody's, you know, bring your poor, your you know, all that, like, we will welcome you. Bullshit. It wasn't like that at all.
It never has been.
No, exactly.
They even put it like, I guess they were in New York, but in the North. But he even said, I think, like, you know, their jobs are being taken by black people for a certain amount, and then even lower from the immigrants. And so like, they hate the immigrants even more than they do. Like, he was obviously very racist against black people.
Yeah, just generally a hateful person.
That was pretty clear, but like, he hated immigrants almost even more. Like, even more. He was like, just purely transactional. Almost.
Yeah, I actually have the quote. I don't, because, you know, it's a bunch of immigrants coming off the boats, and he says, I don't see no Americans. I see trespassers. Irish harps will do a job for a nickel what a N-word does for a dime, and what a white man used to get a quarter for.
Man.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's putting them all below the white man, but he's certainly putting the Irish people
even below the former slaves, you know, like former enslaved people. There's a moment in this that just, it was during the freedom celebration, like when we cut 16 years in the future, the Emancipation Proclamation has been signed. The enslaved peoples are free, you know, quote unquote. Yes. It's a bystander who I think might be the Irish dude who used to roll with Leo's dad. The dead, right, yeah. And now runs with Bill the Butcher, where I think he says something like, they want to make the white men slaves, you know? And like, that was just so very obviously something that people think now, you know, like, they're like, oh, well, something's changing. They must want to oppress the white people. They must want to oppress Christians.
Soon enough, white people will be slaves. Yeah, like, I think it was. Yeah, I think I remember that. I think it was him. It was interesting to see, like, how parts of Liam Neeson's gang went, like, kind of separate ways, and how like some stayed true, which was
a bit of a Mance Raider sort of thing going on with his really character. He brought the tribes together, you know, whenever they line up and they're like the Chichesters.
Dude, that theme, they're like tribal kind of flute. Like at the very beginning of the movie, and then it sort of plays throughout whenever Leo's like going through his like revolutionary, like he's kind of on that same spirit. You hear that song play, and it's like, I don't know, you're kind of like going with him, and like whenever he gets his whole mob, you know, ready at the end, it's like blaring, like that's like, it's so loud, and it's I
a great use of the soundtrack. Like, I agree, Joseph. Like, you notice the flutes and the like the kind of let's go to battle type stuff, and they all split. Like, it's like he brought them all together, And then once he died on the battlefield, like they went, like to your point, they went their separate ways. You had John C. Reilly, who became the the
Cop.
sheriff or whatever he is, or I can't remember what his role was, but and then like you said, the little dude switched sides basically. I mean, at that point they were probably like, hey, we need to survive in a world that
they are
us. We don't have our leader. Our fearless leader's gone. We need to figure out how to live.
And they're literally outlawed by Bill the Butcher after that fight. They're like, you can't even speak the dead rabbit's name anymore after that battle. And I mean, I want to circle back to Daniel Day-Lewis as Bill the Butcher because that's, I mean, easily my favorite performance of the movie, which is saying a lot because there's a lot of really, really good performances. He's just an arm and a leg above everybody.
He's like an honorable villain, and it gives him like this.
Yeah, he's got a code, and that always makes it a little more interesting.
Was it ears and noses will be the trophies tonight, but this man will not be touched. He's like, he will cross over.
Keeps a little shrine to him.
Yeah.
Like that's.
Well, and he celebrates it every year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that.
Yeah, I'll probably also to like remind everyone, like, hey, remember what I did. Like, this was me who did this.
That little moment whenever Amsterdam and the former. The one who used to be an Irishman, excuse him, he used to be an Irishman, as Daniel Day-Lewis delivers that line. Whenever they get into a little fight and in the bar, they've got the whole fighting Irishman stance going on. And they,
dude, oh my gosh. When you see a guy do that, it's over. I'm like, all right.
I'm like, you know what? Never mind. I don't really want to fight anymore, man.
I'm not a fighting man.
It's just wild that's how they used to.
That's how they rolled,
that's funny. Like,
challenge accepted. All right, let's do this.
The way they like split apart, they take off the jackets really quick and go to their corners. But during the fight, they knock the picture over, and the first thing Daniel Day-Lewis, Bill the Butcher, does is go and pick it up, put it back, and it's like, all right, let's go ahead and work this out. Just a really fascinating character and just a ridiculously talented actor. I'm sure it's the top piece of trivia on the IMDb. I don't know if you've seen it. To simulate his glass eye,
which was amazing, like visually.
It's because he literally put prosthetic glass over his eye and learned to tap it with the tip of the knife without blinking.
Wait, it's over his real eye?
It's over his real eye. The dude's commitment to his craft is fucking insane.
Ooh, I was wondering because I'm like, man, that does look really real, especially whenever they zoomed in on it. And
it's real.
It was the whole screen. I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, man, and it has like the American seal kind of on it, I think, or like I don't know what that logo is necessarily, but no, he was and he cut it out because he couldn't look at Liam Neeson whenever he was dead or whatever. He felt guilty for not being able to look at him. He wasn't as honorable as he thought, so he cut one of his eyes out. That's like what, I don't know. I almost went with him for the character as well, just because
wild character.
Bill the Butcher, like that dude's just a mob boss, freaking sight. Like he's like Nicky Santoro and Ace rolled up into one.
Right.
But, take it back 200 years. But no, I think Amsterdam or Vallon, is Vallon just the last name, like the family name, or was that his father?
So.
No, okay. I took it as that was the surname. That was
it was his family.
Name.
Okay.
That whole thing where he's, some of his he steals the movie, man. I mean, like some of his dialogues, like the long ones he goes on where he's talking about what you were saying, Joe, like, I mean, he respects the hell out of the guy. He says, I killed the last honorable man 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And then he goes into that whole thing where he took his own eye and talks about he wanted, he spared me because he wanted me to live in shame. And then he immediately after that, he goes, this is a great man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like a great man. So I cut out the eye that looked away.
This is a great man.
It's crazy.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, what's also really, really, and I've only seen those couple movies with Daniel Day-Lewis. I've seen There Will Be Blood, which is in a similar, it's about 30, 40 years later at the beginning of the 20th century when he strikes oil and that's a little bit more of a similar character to Bill the Butcher, a little bit, not completely, but he has more in common than he does with Reynolds Woodcock, his character in the Phantom Thread. If you watch Phantom Thread, he's a fashion designer, he's a dressmaker, and he's nutty, he's a little different, but he's not like this, like the range this man has and the believable range he has, to the point where I'm not even thinking of him as the same actor. It's unbelievable.
Dude, what was that one scene when he was like he was talking to somebody about how, I don't know, like someone might have died or an animal might have died or something like that, and he started crying, but it was like, and then he like stopped and it was like a fake cry, and he's like,
yeah,
what was that?
Too.
Oh
yeah,
man, that was
exactly
so
what you're
good.
talking about, but
like just scaring the hell out of the guy. Like it was like a pit. Oh, the rabbit died. It was whenever Leo, he hung the rabbit up on the little gate post or whatever, and then he was like the rabbit, like a poor innocent rabbit had to die or whatever or something like that, and then he just like cut it. And I forgot what context that was in necessarily, but yeah, he's just deranged.
He's the Scorsese wild card in this one.
Yeah.
This is the one where he's the Masha. He's the Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, Joe Pesci in Casino, Joe Pesci in anything else. That's the role he's doing in this one. He's being the crazy motherfucker, and he's doing it with a control that not a lot of Scorsese characters have, like Nicky Santoro. Like we did Casino earlier this week, and Joe Pesci's character in that, he's nuts. But he is far from as honorable a man as Bill the Butcher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think after this watch, it became for me like, there's just a few actors, at least for me, that if they're in something, it's worth watching. Like I'm going to watch that because, and I think he's on that list for me now. Yeah. Like I'm probably going to go look for movies that he's in because, God, he just killed it, dude.
Yeah, because you watched There Will Be Blood recently as well.
And that was really good.
Yeah, he's fucking fantastic in that. He's got he doesn't have like a super deep catalog. He's pretty selective, with his roles because he's, it's the craft for him. He's really method. He gets into the, like I said, he put prosthetic glass over his eye and learned to tap it with a knife without blinking.
Yeah.
Because even to the commitment to go ahead and put prosthetic glass over your eye, already you're going above and beyond. To teach yourself to tap it without blinking is a different level of that. You know what I'm saying? Like
that's just impressive.
Blows my fucking mind.
Yeah, that's a different level of acting. And I don't know, I think my favorite scene I think we were talking about it a little bit, was whenever he was talking about how like his father was honorable. And it was like right after Amsterdam takes Jenny to bed.
Yeah,
I think in Billy's bed.
She's laying next to him.
Mm-hmm.
Is it in Billy's bed as well?
Oh, I don't know.
Because he kind of comes in the room, and when Amsterdam wakes up, he's like, Billy the Butcher. He goes like, I just couldn't sleep. Whatever. Kind of like passive aggressive, like couldn't sleep, man. You're with my girl and you're in my bed, sort of thing. I don't know. Like I was wondering. What that if that was like his bed, and if
that's
he was
interesting. No, I mean like it's like the only bed in the entire fucking building, which kind of implies to me that it probably is his bed.
Good catch.
Yeah, no, I hadn't thought of that either. That's an even greater smite upon the man.
Like obviously it's like his friend Johnny like turns on him or whatever, and then reveals who he is to Billy or to Bill. And then that's whenever he knows what's going to happen. But like in that moment, I'm like, wait a minute, does he know? Like, did he figure it out? Like right now, like is he pissed? Like is he kind of going on that like villain arc? I'm going to tell you my whole life story, and then I'm gonna kill you, sort of thing. I thought like I thought he was about to explode at any moment, and like the whole time he's just wrapped in the American flag, just like sitting back on this chair. Like just monologuing. I'm like, oh my God. Like this dude, like it was mesmerizing. Like I think it might be my favorite shot of the movie, and it's my favorite scene. Like him just sitting with the American flag. Like his hairdo. Oh my god, how like disgusting that hair is. But like,
and the flag, the colors were like super vibrant.
Was,
I don't know if you guys noticed. That's usually the flag that was hanging up, though. Did you notice in another scene where that flag is usually hanging up somewhere around where the little shrine to the priest is?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember exactly what it says, but it has, they printed words on it, something to the extent of natives need to protect from foreign. And so that's the flag he's actually wearing in that scene. It's usually hanging up on his wall. It kind of goes back to his, him just being a psycho about them being actual natives and all that. But yeah, I agree, man. That scene was amazing, and that shot was amazing.
No, yeah, I'm fully with you. I thought like that was my gut. Like when I saw that scene, typically what I do when we watch these movies is I go to the Google sheet as something occurs that I think at that moment in the movie, that's my favorite part of this movie. And that was the one that I went ahead and put down as my scene. But then very shortly after, the scene that I ended up going with was after his homie ratted and walked right past Leo. And it's in that moment that, like, another thing is that Leo didn't plan on killing Bill the Butcher that day. He knew he was going to have to after that. He was like, oh, well, I'm fucked. So he watches him walk past and he's like, oh, I gotta do something. He brings Cameron Diaz on stage. He throws the knives. But it's everything after that. Whenever Leo throws the knife, he cleaves it away with the cleaver, like blocks it. And dude was fucking gnarly with it. And then he just kind of tells everybody in the crowd.
Shot glass in one hand as well.
Yeah.
Like, doing his whole pitch or his whole like toast at the same time. I'm like, okay, right, this dude has
that yours?
That is my favorite scene.
That is an amazing. Yeah, and then freaking headbutts the dude, goes crazy.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think that, Joe, you'd mentioned you wondered if he knew. I think that scene where he's sitting by the bed I don't think he did know. And I think that's the most, I don't want to call it vulnerable, but if you remember the end of that scene, he kisses his hand and puts it on his head and tells him, God bless him.
Mm-hmm.
And I always felt like he, in that moment, really was looking at him as a son. And like and so I think that feeds even more into the betrayal once Johnny or whatever,
little dude from E.T.
Yeah, E.T.
Yeah. Freaking narc.
Dude. It's always, guys, it's always a woman.
It's always a woman.
It always is. It's the power of the.
It's the power. It's the power. No, I'm with you. I thought that it's just because he kicks off that scene where he's sitting next to his bed with like I never had a son or something like that, right? And he goes, and what's interesting too is that I think until Amsterdam saw his friend leaving Bill the Butcher's office, I think he'd kind of forgotten what he was doing. I think he'd gotten enveloped in this role, so to say.
I agree. And that actually is probably my favorite quote that kind of illustrates that fact. He said, "It's a funny feeling being taken under the wing of the dragon. It's warmer than you think."
That is a good one.
Yeah. And that's when he gets pretty into it. I mean, he's his right-hand man in a way. He's his his protege.
When they're at the show that Bill the Butcher almost gets killed at, he saves his life. And like, that would have been washed his hands of it. Everything's good.
Yeah. I think that's part instinct, part like, he maybe cared a little bit, but the other part is he wanted to be the one that killed him.
Yeah,
he's like, fuck that. I'm going to be the one that does it.
Yeah, he didn't want some random assassin to come up and do what he's been wanting.
Who do you work for?
He's been plotting this whole time, dude. That's the whole reason he's there. Yeah. He might have gotten caught up in it a little bit and like the money, like the life he was living. Dude was in basically prison, right, for the first 18 years of his life.
Yeah, the orphanarium.
Yeah, and
Hellgate, right? Is that what it was called?
I think, something. It didn't seem fun whatsoever. He tried to escape many times. That adds more time, So he spent more time in there than he even needed to, I guess. But yeah, no, I
that's a good quote. I didn't even remember that one off the top of my head, but
there's another Amsterdam quote, kind of him, just like a narration quote like that one. He says, "When you kill a king, you don't stab him in the dark. You kill him where the entire court can watch him die."
Yeah.
And that, I don't know, just kind of hard. He is kind of a man of honor, I guess. It's sort of a less honorable kill. But as assassinations go, killing a man with throwing a knife, killing a butcher with a throwing knife during the ceremony in which he is glorifying the death of your father.
Right.
I don't know. That's a story that'll go down in history right there. Dude was a one for the theatrics and didn't really know it.
He did what he had to do, but I like that line almost kind of foreshadowed that things don't work out the way you want them to. Like, even so, he did kill him in the open, but they were surrounded by fog. Nobody could see them. It was a one-on-one thing. It was very personal. It actually reminded me of that quote that the boxing announcer said.
Yeah. I thought of that a lot.
Yeah.
During the movie.
Like, these two men knew each other more than anybody possibly could have because they fought to the death.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was
a certain level of intimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
very profound.
And forgive me because I tried to take notes on scenes, and tried to remember some of the categories you guys run down. So some of them I'm just gonna, I'll do off the top. So then scenes, that's your favorite scene then, Joseph, right? Is the one where he's sitting by the bed?
Yeah. Mine was when he calls him out in front of the court also, by the way.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, and then your line were both really good. I also went with an Amsterdam line, but it was the closing remarks, basically the very, very end of the movie.
Yeah.
Whenever we get the flashing through of the eras of New York.
That's my favorite shot.
Oh, dude, gorgeous.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. That was my alternate shot. I'm glad it's getting that.
But I just thought that what Amsterdam was saying during it was so profound. Like, and no matter what they did to build the city up again for the rest of time, it would be like no one ever knew we was here. I was like, ooh,
yeah,
god damn.
And the way it kind of shows, the city skyline and its evolution over all those years, and then the Twin Towers are up. And
apparently it was delayed quite a bit because of
I believe that.
Because of 2001, and but then like they were told to paint out the towers. Scorsese was very adamant about not.
That's the right move. Yeah, I think because
for things like this,
kind of worked out beautifully. Like not knowing, like obviously he did not make this knowing that this was going to happen, and like pay tribute to like things that people will never forget, or
it adds a weight to the end of this movie
it was
that it wouldn't have had.
End of the quote.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's kind of counterintuitive to the whole. I mean, if you were to take them out, and he's saying, there would be like no one even knew he was here.
Exactly.
I mean, that's kind of the point of keeping them in there.
Yeah, exactly. No, I've always been very adamant about that argument. There are a lot of people who think that if you have something set that's going to pass through 2001 in New York, you don't have to go out of your way to show them. But if you show the New York skyline, like it's pre-2001, it's going to have the Twin Towers in it. Yeah. And I think that I do love that last shot, just the evolution of their graves sitting right there, because it was Bill the Butcher buried next to Priest Vallon, right?
Yep.
That's that was strong.
Their headstones are gone, like completely. It's just like grass, like a hill, and it like makes you think, like, oh my gosh, like random fields, in New York could just be a battleground.
Well, where cities are built up, there wasn't always cities there.
Yeah, under those skyscrapers is just an absolute battleground every day. Like underground too, like the underground presence of New York. I wonder how real that was. That's like that's
the caves they were in. I know.
That's kind of nuts. I never really knew about that. But man, what a time not to be alive, Either
Thank God I was not there.
You're kind of either all about that life and like you're all in, and you want to be kind of like the sheriff, kind of like the what's his name? Is
Happy
it Brendan?
Jack?
Is it Walter McGinn?
Monk.
Is it the guy with the club?
Monk.
I can't remember.
Is it Monk?
That's my favorite character.
Dude, no, he was sick. Yeah,
I loved him.
Yeah,
whenever he starts running for office, and they're like, we're like, well, an Irishman's never gonna get there, and then like he starts giving speeches, and they're like, oh shit, we should have had him run for mayor. Like this dude is made for this.
Alternate for my favorite line was he says, "Can I say what I want?" And then Amsterdam was like, "That's why I chose you." You know, he's like, or that's why I wanted you. And then you just see him out there, just like going off, you know, and the crowd's just going crazy for him, and I don't know, it's like, okay, like I know the tide's turning, like you're feeling really good for everybody, and then Bill, you know, the butcher comes in and just absolutely
butchers him.
No honor, dude, whatsoever. Like,
that was when it's one of my favorite things about movie villains is that every single one of them that you find to be honorable in some capacity, eventually everything they stand for begins to collapse in on itself, or else they're not the villain. Yeah. You know, it happens in almost every major franchise, you know, like even in Marvel, which I'm not going to compare a Scorsese movie to Marvel because that'd just be disrespectful to the man, but it to see him stoop to those lows was kind of a sign that he's over it. You know, he's done with with his whole thing. And if he does proceed with it going forth, it's a facade at that point. Now he's no longer honorable no matter what he does. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I mean that's peak him seeing the world change around him, like and resisting as much as he can, and then it's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna throw this cleaver in this dude's back
in the broad daylight with people watching.
And right after, he was like, "No, I will not fight you in the street. Look, city, look what he's trying to get me to do. He's trying to get me to fight him. I will not do that. I'm a peaceful man. Let's talk inside. Let's solve this the democratic way."
Yeah. And the minute he turns his back to walk in,
boom. Yeah.
Shitty shit.
Man.
No, yeah, but I liked Monk a lot, so I did end up going with him for my favorite character, just because like at the beginning when he's like 10 per notch, and Liam Neeson's like per new notch, and he's like, "You got yourself a deal," and he kicks open the door. I also just love Brendan Gleeson. You know, I loved him in he was in Banshees of Inisherin last year, which is a movie that I absolutely adore. So when he popped up, it was kind of cool just seeing a bunch of like really great Irish actors all just kind of pile up right next to each other.
Yeah.
And I was like,
and you know, you think in the beginning when he gets in the priest's pocket, like, oh, this dude just
touch and delicate but fair.
Yes.
I love that line.
And it ends up he was holding on to
he held on to the piece. And he gave it back to him.
And I don't know if that was his intention by going in the guy's pocket, because he legit had just said, "Hey, 10 per." But I thought that wrapped up well too.
No, that's one of my favorite parts of the movie. Whenever he pulls him aside, and he's like, "Yeah, I saw you. I know who you are." Yeah. Like, ironically enough, the one who was the mercenary, essentially, the one he had to pay to fight, was the one who was able to look at his son and go, "That's the priest's son." Yeah. You know, like I thought that was cool, which was another reason that I loved that character. There's so many great lines in this movie, because now I'm thinking of, because it's a touch and delicate, but it's fair, you know, like that whole thing was funny. Whenever Amsterdam introduces himself to Bill and he's like, "I'm Amsterdam," and he goes, "I'm New York." You know, I loved that. That's and just I love Daniel Day-Lewis's voice in this movie, like the accent he's struck up this, because it is a New York accent, but it's a New York accent you don't hear anymore.
Old timey New York.
Yeah, it's really, really strong. And I'm curious about, there's a line that Leo delivers at the beginning of the movie where he says something about how, his voice had changed, and there are all sorts of accents in New York. They won't know the difference. It made me realize that I've never heard Leonardo DiCaprio do a lick of voice work with anything with his voice, and it made me curious if he can do it.
Right.
He changes it a little bit in a lot of things. Like Jordan Belfort doesn't sound exactly the same as his character in The Departed, and and stuff like that. But he does not do the voice work that Daniel Day-Lewis is doing in this movie, you know? And,
yeah, no.
He shows it a little bit in one of the quotes that I like, that it just because like it makes you think, man, people really talked that way back then.
Yeah,
Where
right.
he says he sees Jen,
and
he says she's a prim-looking stargazer.
yeah,
You know, and I'm like, dude, that's how guys got down back then.
they're
You
like,
know?
oh,
Like, you know, and I wonder, like, okay, is that like,
that's 1860s chiffon.
yeah, like how dirty is that?
Yeah,
I don't
right.
know. Like, is that, what do you
Yeah.
really
In fact,
saying?
modernly, that'd be like, it feels like it'd be incredibly nice. You
You're
know,
right.
Yeah,
she's a prim-looking stargazer.
That's a
you know?
prim-looking stargazer.
And that, like him,
girlfriend's telling her like, "Oh my, he called you a prim-looking stargazer. He
Yeah.
wants you so bad." Like,
Yeah.
oh my god, you wouldn't-
I love that first scene where Jenny picks his boy's pockets, and he's like, "I let her steal stuff all the time."
And you knew right then that dude was a simp.
Oh yeah, one of the
He's been
biggest
trying.
simps in movie history.
Yeah, I mean,
He's been
so
trying.
unlikable. I mean, right from that moment, I'm like, this
A
dude.
narc and a simp, dude.
Yes,
Oh my
I mean, what a
gosh.
deadly combination.
Dude.
Wow.
That's why he ended up hung up on that fence.
Yeah, no shit.
What a brutal thing, too, man. That's
Yeah.
that's awful to
That's
to
terrible.
even think about or see like that.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's vicious.
They did that to him. Like, and I liked that Amsterdam. He still mourned him a little bit, even though he'd given him up. You know, it was still a moment where it was like he wouldn't have died if it wasn't for Amsterdam, and I think Amsterdam kind of knew that. You know, he was
Right.
so he. It's just kind of like the beef that he has with Bill. Kind of, it starts to affect other people's lives, and that's when he's like, "All right, you know what? Dead rabbits are back. Let's fucking do this thing."
Yeah, and I think that there's a certain aspect of with like Johnny.
Johnny, that's right. Kept wanting to call him Henry. I think that's his character in E.T.
Probably
Yeah.
where he, it was the first one that recognized who he really was.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like there's a certain like I don't want to call it trust, but like, man, this guy has held it down. He
He's
knows
the one
who
who
I
took
am.
out the guy's
He's
knees.
he's the guy.
when-
Yeah, and so I'm sure there was this. It was hard, which is why he ended up, putting him out of his misery, right? But
Yeah.
Mhm.
Damn, that's a good scene too. I'd forgotten that
Yeah.
he actually did the last little bit there.
And Jenny's right there with him too.
Mhm.
Kind of backing up, and he just, I don't know, Amsterdam just kind of has to sit there for a minute and kind of be like, just kind of contemplate it all.
And
Yeah.
that scene is powerful too because the shot rings out and the butcher was sharpening his cleaver and his knives, and when the shot rings out, he stops. And there's a little bit of silence, and then he goes right back into
He's like,
sharpening
it's
his stuff.
peace. You know, he's like, yes, it has happened. You know, like
he's like he went, he did it.
Mhm. Yeah. No, yeah, that's it was. I'm having the same thing that we have with most of the movies. Usually, when we talk about one, I either like it less or I like it more, and I like it more the more we talk about it. This is a strong one, dude. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Do you have any subversions for your favorite character potentially, or are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think. It'd be easy to pick any one of them. I did find it interesting, although there are a lot of people that pop up that you recognize from other things, but there wasn't a whole lot of character development outside of just a real handful of, of the cast. I like Jenny a lot. I like a strong. She was a down ass chick, man. I mean, she was ride or die. She was ready to go for him. She was obviously very cagey. She could take care of herself.
What was the term they called her? And like, because she's a pickpocket,
right? It was two things.
Yeah. Oh, I can't remember what it was
because she'd also just show up at rich people's houses and act like one of the wait staffs or whatever, servers. Yeah, I can't remember the term either.
Yeah,
but
there was like the interaction that her and Leo have. Cameron Diaz is an interesting actress for me because, she's been really, really good in a lot of stuff, and she's been in stuff that's just not very good, and it reflects poorly upon her performance, even though she might not have done anything particularly bad. I was like, when she popped up, I was like, oh, Cameron Diaz is in this movie, you know, like most recently, I think I'd watched her in The Mask with Jim Carrey, you know, so like, so I was like, I was interested to see how she would hold up. And there's that scene where Leo catches her outside of that rich person's house, and they have like that really electric chemistry moment where I was like, oh yeah, tits.
It's super intense, and like he keeps leaning into the blade up against his neck, like do it, I just
like, whoa, like no dude has ever,
right.
I usually take all the things from the guy, I'm never found out. Like she had like 10 necklaces.
She said, she was like, I'm not sure which one it is.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not sure which one's yours, man. You take it.
That's just like a normal day. That's just like she's going on her morning walk, and on the way she got on the bus.
She said something about how she saved. I can't remember how much money it is per week, but she's like, so now I have like
215 10 cents to every dollar, or like 25 cents to every dollar.
She's like, so now I've been doing that for 10 years. Now I have $215, and I was like, my God.
Because and what's funny about that scene too is that's when she's talking about going to San Francisco, and I found it so amazing that the quickest, quote unquote, quickest route, and probably safest at that time, is they had to wrap all, because there was I can't remember the canal.
No canal.
Forgive me, but had to wrap all the way around South America and up, and that
the quickest way.
Right? Like that. I mean, there's no telling how long that took, and there's probably some truth to it. You didn't want to navigate the true Native Americans around that time and go west, but that was wild too.
Yeah, no, because that would have been prior to like the boom out west for like the 49ers and stuff. It's
that was like part of her dream. They're like, people are pulling gold straight
out of river.
We have to go. Like, we have to get in on this. And it's, I don't know, that's like the Oregon Trail, right? Like whenever people were, or the Gold Rush. Is that the same thing? The Oregon Trail, is that like during the Gold Rush, or is that before?
I mean, I think it was all relatively post Civil War. So I mean, it was probably all around that same time that people were heading west. Yeah,
a lot of people died trying to make that trip.
Yeah, exactly. Which would point to why she was willing to get on a boat from New York to San Francisco and travel. Gosh, how many thousands of miles via boat?
Yeah, because east to west, the Oregon Trail was a 2,170-mile large-wheeled wagon route that connected the Missouri River to valleys in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be even further
from New York.
Yeah, because it starts in Missouri and ends in Oregon. Yeah. It started in the 1830s.
They really had to go on a boat.
Publicized by the 40s.
Yeah, they're going on a boat for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing. Yeah, no,
that's
fuck no.
Wild, though.
Especially not at that time, bro. Like, I'm not going to drive from New York to California now. You know,
that's true.
And it'll take me few days.
Yeah, roads. They didn't really have roads, really back then at all. Man, what a time. And that's like, dude, that's like 3 humans ago. You get that time,
if they live very, very full lives. Yeah.
I mean, like, obviously, but like,
you have no.
3. It's possible for
someone born in 1865 could have died in 1965. And that person could actually still be alive. A
grandchild of someone alive during that time could be alive right now. They'd be very old, but very possible. Well, life expectancy was a lot lower back then, probably because people were getting murdered in the streets left and right. Not just because of disease and health, just the actual danger of everyday life back then was an actual risk.
Wild, wild east.
Man, yeah. No, I had no idea. Like, zero clue.
I know, and the irony of that too is like everybody looks at. I think that's what kind of struck me is it's a part of history you weren't really ever taught, and it did happen, and it was in New York, and New York is what's New York? It's the greatest city in the world, right?
Yeah.
Like it just paints it in a time where that's what it was then, and
well, even less than 100 years earlier, it wasn't until the late 1700s that the capital of the United States was moved from New York. Right. Like, it was New York less than 100 years before this. Mm-hmm. So, if it was like this a little bit later than that, what was it when it was the capital of the United States?
Or was it more civilized?
Right. Or did it
was it more
devolve into this?
Yeah. That's like kind of the impression I get.
Too many people in one place. And in like a sense of new land, freedom, no king watching over us. Like in over in Europe, it's way more civilized. You have a king and very strict laws, and you have to do whatever the king says. But over in America, you do whatever you
whatever
want.
Bill the Butcher says.
Yeah, you're.
Well,
I mean,
if you think about it, like even if it was a civilized city, which I think it was probably more so, back when it was the capital. But I mean, think of it now. Miami, whatever port city, if 15,000 people are coming from another country a day on boats, think of the chaos that ensues.
Yeah.
Just from, like, to your point, Joe, like so many people. Like even today, that would be wild. Like
Yeah,
that
it would be a lot.
How sustainable would that be?
Mm.
Far more now than then, but it kind of makes you think of how shit could go sideways pretty quick if that many people. And that was, I'm assuming, I'm not a history buff. I'm assuming that was pretty much the only way to get here.
Oh yeah,
It's New York, and just
probably a few other port cities, but like that was, Ellis Island. That was the place, like that was the place to be. I couldn't even fucking imagine living in a time period like that. Like that's beyond me. But
literal.
it was I was really, really satisfied with this movie overall. My favorite shot was actually really early on in the movie. Like I took it down, as I said, as it happened, and then there was never another shot in the movie where I was like, yeah, that's better than that. It was when, I can't remember, I believe it's Amsterdam. He grabs a Bible and he throws it in the water. Mm-hmm. And the slow motion of the Bible, like, splashing into the water, which it's night, so the water's like black, and it like slowly goes below the surface, was just so cool. I
think it was like after that dance where Jenny chose him.
Yep.
And it was kind of like a religious, you're kind of like in a church sort of place.
Yeah, and the guy comes up to him and he's like, may God bless you, go to hell.
He's like, go to hell. Give him a Bible, and I think he just chucks it off the bridge, like right after that. Maybe.
Because him and Jenny were like laying next to the water right before that, and
and then he realized how well she possibly knew the butcher, and he was like, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah,
but going back to where she chose him, that was another telltale sign of Johnny being a simp. He got all bent out of shape that she didn't pick him. He was ready too. He was like, he thought for sure,
and now's my time.
What's this? And also, what's this Scorsese thing about scars on women? Like you have another, like in After Hours. Like the fear of scars.
Well, and then to connect it to Casino, her relationship to Bill the Butcher goes back to when she was a very young girl, and she does the whole thing where she's like, "It's okay, he didn't touch me until I asked him to."
Yeah,
but that's still like.
Turn him off even more, kind of, he kind of, like, obviously you don't ever wish that upon a person, but it was like, oh, you were actually, like, okay with, like, you're okay with this guy, and, like, you're, like, the man who murdered my father, so many conflicting feelings are going on at once for him. He doesn't know how to feel. He's so, like, turned on and turned off at the same time, he's like, God, the sexual tension is unreal right now, but, like, at the same time, like, you've been pampering my father's murderer, for quite a while. So it's like, I don't know.
Butcher.
They eventually have their good night. I think in Billy's bed, which is hilarious.
Yeah, that's just another little layer there.
Just kind of like, all right, dude, can't sleep. Like, what the fuck? Now I'm gonna.
Yeah, because he was drunk as fuck, just like watching them. Yeah. She like goes over and like tends to Billy, and then he gets up, chases her down the hallway, and then takes her upstairs. Right? Like, isn't that how that goes?
I think, because
he does. He goes after, and then they end up upstairs, or wherever they ended up. Another thing that just kind of caught me was when Amsterdam was sharp enough to, they were gonna shut down the boxing. That boxing match, and because it wasn't allowed in the city, and he just looked at him and goes, "Where does the city end?"
Yeah. And
the thing that got me though is when they announced the winner of that fight won in the 75th round.
Yeah.
And like,
oh my gosh,
like you read stuff. I mean, it used to be like boxing was like you fought until
someone went down.
75 rounds.
75.
Dude.
I forgot about that part. Yeah.
That just
I don't think that person's living anymore. Like that's
If he is, not for long.
Oh
you
my
know,
God.
like neither of them actually. You know, even the winner is dying within months.
Die of exhaustion.
You know? Yeah, exactly. The setting, however, for a boxing match like that would be extremely cool.
Oh yeah.
The docks, like they're surrounded by water, that'd be hard.
One decision. It's kind of like Jordan Belfort being like, these penny stocks aren't. Are you kidding? I get how?
Yeah.
I get what? I get how many percent? You know, it's kind of like that one decision that changed everything. It was just him being like, where does the city end? Oh, okay. We'll have it here in the water. And he, thank you to Bill the Butcher for all of the events and his young accomplice. And then, people are putting him in the ring. And he's like, all right, he's liking it, but he's like,
and Bill told him that, like, right? Yeah. Didn't Bill say, hey, don't forget this guy over here made it happen? So it showed him a little love there.
Just one of the more interesting character dynamics. And again, it kind of, to compare it to Casino last week, a little bit of a Ace Rothstein and Nikki Santoro thing where, they're friends, but they're enemies, but they're friends, but they're enemies. Like there's this love-hate thing going on. And I think you find that with a lot of his movies. Goodfellas has a little bit of that with Henry Hill and Robert De Niro's character. And obviously Joe Pesci is just a nuisance the entire fucking movie. I mean, Wolf of Wall Street. Jordan Belfort considers letting Donnie Azoff die. Like he's like, this would make shit so much easier for me. And then he ends up saving him anyway. But like, it occurred to him, maybe I let this guy die right now. Like, so there's this really interesting thing Scorsese does with relationships. If they're even, I think his movies are a lot better outside of the romances. Like the dichotomy between two people who are just friends or enemies. Like he does a really good job with that, and this was probably his most interesting relationship formed yet, I would say.
Well, go ahead, Joe.
I don't know. I was just like confused at the end a little bit. I don't know. Maybe I didn't just quite catch on what was going on. But like when the mobs were all marching, and then it kind of like phased back and forth, but like maybe like one of those mobs wasn't actually. Like, it was represented as, like, a different group. Like, I felt like it kind of... Or maybe it was flashing just back and forth between different marches that were happening at the same time.
That's what it was.
Something like that.
Yeah, there was a group that was... because at some point in the movie, too, Amsterdam, during his narration, basically says, we never thought the Civil War would... impact New York, right? So they're thinking that they're not going to be affected by it. But when they started to implement having to this draft, like you're gonna get drafted or you're gonna buy your way out of the draft. I think Joe, what you're referencing is the mob that was basically, we're not going to go to war for you. So that was all going on. That's right. It is a little hectic, and but that's my interpretation of it. I'm sure there's a deeper meaning of how they're related, but it seems...
Yeah, they're definitely trying to do like an overlay of the Civil War with the Civil War happening within New York. But it also confused me as well, because I was like, a lot culminated here, a lot more than I thought the movie was about, and then it all happens right at that same place. And
there's also like the rich kind of manipulating things as well. Like we have to hang 4 people. Like we have to hang someone. And,
they're all like, yep, I'm ready. The guy that Bill the Butcher talks to, and he's like, are you ready, man? And he's like, yep, today's my day.
The one guy that was like, I did nothing wrong, not a day in my life. Where's my son? Or my daughter, or whatever. Like, that was.
Don't look away.
Yeah,
I mean, it definitely illustrates the class separation.
Oh, for sure,
big time.
Well, and that's the moment when, because Leo I think he was on Billy's side at that point. Like, he'd been real down with Billy. Obviously, he's doing his whole thing, but whenever he watches them hang this man as his son watches, it's kind of when he goes, oh, that's right. That's why I'm here. I've got to got to do something about this Billy guy, you know?
Yeah, he does lose himself in all the rise quite often. He's doing well for himself, just kind of sticking by good old Billy here. It's just things are going well for him. He's getting a lot of money. He's doing his thing, but I don't know, every time he's reminded of like why he's there, it's always really awesome. Or a scene where he can't reveal any emotions of like who he is, and then like after Bill leaves the room and then breaks down, was really good. That's why I like almost considered him for the performance, was like the moments like that, but I don't know.
Daniel Day-Lewis is just so good in this movie, man. Like it's
kind of undeniable. Yeah.
As far as the movies we've covered for Scorsese so far, I think quite easily the best performance out of any of them, in my opinion.
This is like almost like the equivalent of Nolan's Spotlight, like a Heath Ledger Joker. Like this is like, I don't know, it's nuts how villain just took over the main character like completely, pretty much. Like every time he was on screen, just through his performance.
I think it was Training Day where Denzel Washington was billed as number 2 behind Ethan Hawke, but then every time Denzel was on screen, it was like, well, this is actually the main character of the movie. But that's kind of the same thing you got going on with Daniel Day-Lewis in this one. But man, is there anything you think we're missing, or are we about ready for a rating on this bad boy?
I think maybe. Did you say a scene? I don't know. I guess you talked about a couple scenes. I don't know. Did you ever lock down one particular?
Talking about me or my dad?
Father.
Mine was when he was at the bed wrapped in the flag. And that whole dialogue where
that was so strong.
His face was beat to a pulp, and his and he goes through that whole thing, and then talks about taking his own eye, and I mean, it's just
he's just monologuing. That's just that's him getting to perform. Him and Scorsese actually collaborated one other time, as far as I know.
Really?
And I plan on watching that tonight. Actually, it's called The Age of Innocence, which I take to be a little bit more of like just based off the poster. I've not read anything about the movie. I've not watched a trailer or anything. I take it to be sort of like a Shakespearean romance movie.
Oh, okay.
It's him and Winona Ryder. Which
what year are we talking?
90.
Around? Oh wow, okay.
92, 93, I think. So I'm like, I'm certainly going to watch that after watching this. Daniel Day-Lewis and Scorsese seem to have a repertoire that I can get behind.
He was awesome. And as far, I don't know, I think we said last episode that Casino was the most visually appealing Scorsese movie so far, and I think that has been beaten, in my opinion. I think like the set designs.
I can get behind the idea of the set design and the costume design being elevated.
Maybe not the cinematography.
The cinematography for me in Casino was ridiculously good.
That I can see, but like as far as
creating an environment,
just the world that they built, like it was.
Yeah, I mean, they could have filmed Casino in Vegas.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have had to do anything. It's a believable environment that there is nowhere in America in 2002 that looks the way Gangs of New York looks. That's
they had to build this.
There's no doubt that part of it, the creating a time period, which I always think Scorsese is very, very good at as well. When you think about Wolf of Wall Street, the way he depicts the 80s and Goodfellas, this evolution from the 60s to the 70s to the 80s, he really captures that really effectively. And to take it back to as far back as I believe he'll go, depending the Age of Innocence, when I watch that, I don't know how far back that is, but
well, the new one,
Killers, that's going to be the early 1900s.
Really?
Is that World War right before?
I didn't realize that. I just assumed that it was earlier than that. Okay.
No, it's I read the book that it's based on, and I'm very like, if it's adapted well, it's going to be a ridiculously good movie.
It looks amazing.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it, and it's like late 1800s into the early 1900s because it's kind of the first. the first investigation of the FBI before, like, it's kind of responsible for the formation of the FBI, this investigation.
Oh, okay.
Here to look about these
J.
murders?
Edgar Hoover is involved and stuff. So like it's crazy how long of a reign in history he had, because he's still relevant into the 60s, but he's also relevant at the beginning of the 20th century, which is like an absurd amount of power for one person to have. But
Yes, I don't know. Makes me excited to see what he's doing in Killers, because he can really capture the time period really well. And I think
that movie looks so fucking good. Every trailer is so good. Like I cannot wait for it. But yeah, how about we rate this bad boy? We've only got enjoyment and critical rating for our director spotlights, and on a scale of 1 to 10, we'll start with my father. You know, we'll have him rated outside of us. How much you liking the movie, enjoyment wise, 1 to 10?
I mean, it's probably one of my favorite movies. So I'd probably give it around a 9 for me. I really enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, I mean, like as far as back as I can remember, you know, there are a few movies that you've always talked about as being like your favorite movies of all time. Gladiator.
For whatever reason.
Gladiator. That's a classic dad movie right there.
Yeah,
that's dad movie to the max. Cinderella Man.
Yeah, Cinderella Man.
And those are the three that I can think of. So like if you would like, I was not going to be shocked if you threw a 10 at this bad boy, but a 9 is about where I'm hovering. I liked this movie a great deal. Joe, what about you? How you feeling?
I mean, I'm thinking, I kind of I put a list, my Scorsese ranking of all the Scorseses I have watched, and I thought about it a little bit more than last episode when I was just kind of throwing it together. And I have this number 2, and it's only behind Wolf of Wall Street. And Wolf of Wall Street's just, I don't know, it's kind of you get a lot. It's funny. It's also a timepiece. I think Leo just is awesome as Jordan Belfort in there, and then also I don't know, just that's a crazy movie. But this is number 2 for Scorsese for me, and close. Like it could be number 1 is the thing from him. I really enjoyed this one. It kind of caught me just like After Hours did. After I watched that one, I'm like, wow, that's just, I don't know. I haven't really seen a movie like this before, and I don't know. I don't know. I guess my historical movies, maybe I just haven't watched a lot of them, but I've
period pieces.
Yeah, this is like kind of the first movie I've just ever seen of this time period of New York and how real it was, and how crazy it would be to live in this time. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So I think we gave an 8.75 to After Hours and Casino, and I think I'm either there or slightly above. So I'm either.
I mean, like my Scorsese ranking, because I do the same thing you do. After I watch a Scorsese movie, I throw it on the little letterbox list. I've got it at 4, behind Wolf of Wall Street, Goodfellas, and Casino at 3, and then After Hours is at 5. So like, it's right there. It's right there with the 8.75s as well. So, I would personally be very cool with a 9 if you wanted to throw at that. Personally, I can't tell you. Me and you have a little bit of a different perspective of the gangster movies. I like those a great deal.
Yeah, I do have Casino and Goodfellas. I've only seen 9 Scorsese movies, and I have them at 6 and 7. Goodfellas.
Isn't that crazy though? Like you've watched 9 Scorsese movies without probably realizing you've watched 9 Scorsese movies.
I was making the list, and I'm like, I've only seen like 3 or 4, and I'm like, oh wait a minute, oh yeah, Wolf of Wall Street. I'm like, oh yeah, Taxi Driver, that's him. I'm like, oh yeah, Goodfellas, that's him. Oh, The Departed, that's him. I'm like,
The Departed,
wow. Yeah. I'm like, wow, I've seen
the ones you guys have reviewed so far. What's the average on the enjoyable ranking?
8.75 would be the highest.
Okay.
It's tied for the highest with Casino and After Hours, and then we gave The King of Comedy an 8.
Okay.
And I'm hovering high up there, you know, like when it comes to 8.75s or up that we've given in previous director spotlights. How do you feel about it in comparison to a movie like Tenet by Christopher Nolan?
Yeah, it's pretty comparable. Tenet just has the sci-fi thing, so for me personally, I'm
Boosts it a little bit.
more kind of into that. And there's a lot more going on with that story. This one's kind of a very simple story, but that's kind of the point, just to allow the character and time.
It's very similar to Casino in that regard. Like it's just
yeah.
And I would say that it has an even greater emotional stake. So like I'd be perfectly cool giving this a 9 as well. We try to be as lenient as we can possibly be. Or stringent, I should say. We try to go as low as we can without feeling like we're overshooting it. So I think 9's fair.
I do agree. I like 9.
And in terms of quality, not far off from that for me. How are you feeling about it on a scale of 1 to 10? Paps.
Gosh, okay. So what's the measurement here? What are we talking?
It's just overall just how well done the movie is. The performances, the visuals, the score. There was only one moment with the score that I felt was a little odd, and it was the anachronistic, almost hip hop rock thing they were at the beginning during the fight.
I didn't like that at all.
Yeah, I thought that was a little goofy, which I mean, like, it's not enough to be like, well, this movie is just not as good for that reason. But it's definitely something you can point to and go, I'm not a huge. I personally was not a huge fan of that either. But
what's funny is that this is watching it this time was the first time I'd noticed that.
Yeah, I think that it's just
it seemed out of place.
Especially since they didn't return to that style of score at all for the rest of the movie. If they had, maybe it would feel a little bit more fitting thematically, but I just thought it was interesting to do that and then be like, we're never touching something like that again. Right. So that's one little moment. And then the ending being a little muddled kind of does... Because I remember watching it and being like, oh, we're building up to this epic ending, and then they started throwing in a bunch of different elements that I didn't think were as important to the story itself. It did more feed into that idea of New York kind of collapsing in on itself and then being built up again. So like,
I think that it did cause confusion. The end, how they had all the people that were anti-draft and attacking the
union men,
and attacking the rich, and I think that did add confusion. I'd probably say, I mean, without having lived in that era, though, I think it captures something that is very believable. That's how it was. I'd probably put it at 8.5, just because. And it's funny because it had been so long since I watched it, I'd kind of forgot about that confusing part at the end. And watching it, it really does take away from the buildup of this whole time it's been about Amsterdam and vengeance on the death of his father. And then you kind of throw this curveball in and it's confusing. So I'm going to go 8.5 on it.
I'm in a similar, I like that idea too. I'm in a similar vein where I think that ending up, and I understand that the point of the ending, which I think did land, it would have landed regardless without enveloping all these different stories that weren't. I mean, they were happening during the movie, but they were not important during the movie. You know what I'm saying? Like,
they were more hinted at. I mean, people were getting off of the boats. I remember in the whoever the I can't remember the guy's name. The kind of mayor, or whoever that guy was basically they were basically making people citizens and then telling them they were going to war. Yeah. So there were those subtle things throughout. They were like, okay, you're an American now. We're going to pay you this to go fight for you. Now go fight for your country. I think. Yeah. Said. Yeah. Like you show up the same day.
Point of the mob at the end was to show like people were fed up and like they're like, no, we're not just going to go to war. Like obviously this is a way for the rich to get out and just to send the poor to war. No one has $300, and I think they got that point across every time, because every time the draft came up, it showed all of the coffins as well. Like on every ship, for every man that was getting on, there was almost a coffin to match him, like being taken off the ship as well. And then you have that sign right here, this makes you a citizen, and then sign right here, and that makes you a soldier. And then you'll fight for the military. And then they probably don't understand English, and they're just like, all right, like who knows if they even understand English, and they're just like signing these papers because they think it's what they're supposed to do, and then they just become
this might just be my uncultured ass. I had no idea there was an Irish language I had no idea that Irish
Just English? Oh wait,
had
yeah.
their own language. Like, there's a point when Monk speaks Irish, and it says he's speaking in a
Irish,
different.
yeah.
He speaks in a different language and says speaks Irish, and I'm like,
Oh yeah.
oh wow, yeah. I don't know if that's just of a bygone era, or I don't know if they're still doing that over in Ireland. But like,
I guess it was only Irish immigrants. Because I was just thinking it was
Yeah.
just kind of immigrants in
general. I think they were focusing on the Irish boats, as it were.
Most
but,
Irish people do speak English, though. I guess. But these people just didn't have a choice. But yeah, I think they get the point across just by doing that, and they don't really need that in the final battle. I mean, it is cool to have. I think it's probably historically correct to have the Navy fire upon the city. I think that probably did happen, so they needed to have that in there at the end. But I don't know. I think the real ending that we're all watching for is Amsterdam to kill Bill the Butcher. Like, I don't know. We just, that's what we want to see, and we want to see it happen in front of everybody. But I kind of like the smoke out and everything.
The thematic tie to end it in a haze, as opposed to
very personal. Yeah.
Yeah, but if I'm being honest, I remember that fight scene being a little more of a fight.
Yeah, right.
Because it really was. They're both basically blown up, right? And they're both laying there, and he just gets up quicker and kills him.
Yeah.
And I didn't really specifically remember that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
that's how that happens.
That happened quick.
Yeah.
I mean, like it. But anyway, yeah. So
I was reading some of the trivia, and apparently they did brawl. They had like this kind of because Daniel Day-Lewis was very method, and he was just kind of insane, and they just kind of got, I don't know, they were just kind of brawling, like a little for real, but a little in character, but they didn't capture it on camera. No one like had the cameras out in time, apparently, like that, and they said they would have kind of used that for this moment where they're kind of looking at each other, and maybe they had this kind of last little brawl before.
Yeah, that's something that Scorsese, he has a boxing movie from 1980 called Raging Bull. And the fighting in that one, I mean, it's the point of the movie, so it's directed a little bit better. The fight scenes in this, the hand-to-hand combat, I thought was kind of horrendous. I had a tough time watching it. Whenever Leo does fight the former Irishman at the beginning of the movie, they just kind of cut back and forth in front of them as they like swing, and all you see is someone like swinging and then someone swinging.
The editing is pretty quick there.
Yeah. No, it's just, I thought it was, it's well edited, and I think it kind of saves it, but it's just, you can't really tell what's going on. And I think that's important for a fight sequence. I understand that it's not the point of this movie, but if you're going to have fights, I want to see the fight, I want to see what happens. So that would be like, I don't have hardly any gripes with this movie. But as always, there are places to improve upon.
Yeah. I mean, I said that it kind of is visually kind of more appealing than Casino a little bit, just for the more of the set design and costume design and everything like that. But I still think Casino's probably an overall better made movie. Even though like Casino kind of doesn't really have a plot line, you're just kind of on this roller coaster, and you just kind of have to follow the ride. This one kind of has somewhat of a plot line, like
I mean, a much more, I think a much
more defined,
more definable plot line, something you can point to. Because I mean, Casino is much more abstract. It's like Ace Rothstein's journey in Vegas, basically. Like it's like the trials and tribulations of living in Las Vegas as Ace Rothstein. There's a bunch of shit that happens in that movie. This is like, it's incredibly focused. It's and I think that does benefit it in a lot of ways. But I think I'm sitting in a pretty good spot with it.
Because we gave Casino a 9.25, so that's the ceiling. After Hours, we gave an 8.75, and I think I'd
split it right down the middle there.
I think this might be a 9, just a niner.
Nines across the board for us.
And I think I do agree with that. It barely puts it below Casino, 0.1% below, but it does put it above After Hours and King of Comedy, in which
there you go.
Do agree. You know, Casino just has that. It has a grandness to it. Has a I don't know.
There's a much greater emotionality with this one that I felt much more connected to Amsterdam than I did Ace Rothstein. You know, like
where'd you guys have Goodfellas?
Goodfellas we did for the 52-year journey through film, which was a whole.
Got it. So
we had a whole different rating system then as well, so it's hard to compare.
Okay.
But it would probably be like a 9.8 if I had to guess.
Goodfellas, we gave it a 4.85 as a film.
Yeah, we were much more particular. Like we do 0.25 intervals now.
Okay.
We used to be like, well, if this is at a 4.6 and this is at a 4.4, then this is a 4.5. Right. You know, like that sort of thing.
7 was like a 4.77.
Yeah,
because sevens. So, we got pretty particular, but overall was a 4.92, which would be like a 9.83 for Goodfellas.
Yeah.
If you double that,
that's a very good movie. Personally, it's still top 2 for me, Scorsese wise.
It's weird.
But yeah, like when you get down to it, as far as like what I would like to rewatch, I think on any given day, I'd be more in the mood to watch Casino than I would Gangs of New York, personally. Not for you.
Nope. No, I don't know. I'm just I like his gang movies. I like them, and this one has gang in the title, but it feels the least gang movie out of all of them. But I like it. I like it.
Man. I mean, like if Casino had the boys from Kansas City pulling up in like top hats, would you be down?
Yeah, you know, if they didn't disrespect our city and say we can't even get a cup of coffee, right?
The guy couldn't make a cup of coffee.
You know, maybe I'll consider the movie.
And that's me. I'm Nicky Santoro.
And it's just the quality of Scorsese. It's like I say that it's like so much below, or like no way, I'm watching this one first. But it's like Casino is still Casino, and Goodfellas is still Goodfellas. Like
I said that on the Casino episode last week. It's like if you're doing a ranking of Scorsese movies, it's like, wow, that's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. 8. You know, like
right.
It's like he's just got such a deep filmography.
So many movies where, like, a lot of people will say this is my favorite movie of all time. Like I've heard The Wolf of Wall Street from a lot of people. I've heard The Departed from a lot of people. Taxi Driver even from some. I don't understand that one. I think
that's one I need to revisit.
Travis Bickle. I don't know, that's a nuts movie. I don't know how that could be a favorite of all time. Not quite the happy ending, but I don't know. He does have just such a deep filmography where he has a movie for everyone. It seems.
Yeah, I mean, Goodfellas is probably a top 5 movie for me all time.
Oh, it's so
easily. Yeah.
He has a movie that
I probably need to rewatch Casino because, me being the old man I am, for people that really, you know, and when I was your guys' age, I didn't even know who Scorsese was, right? But I knew who De Niro and Pesci were,
right?
And so I think I had such big expectations for Casino because of Goodfellas that I was disappointed in Casino. And honestly, I don't know that I've seen Casino since maybe the first or second time I saw it when it came out.
Oh, no shit.
So that's probably worth a rewatch for me because I did hold it in a regard to where I was just the whole time I'm comparing it. I mean, it shouldn't be compared. It's not good. It's totally different idea, totally different movie, you know? But I remember just coming away from it thinking, well, that's no Goodfellas.
Yeah,
that's not
right.
even close to Goodfellas, you know, which probably isn't fair.
No, right. But we own it now. You can watch it on our Apple. It was available for $5 the other day, so I was like, well, I'm gonna scoop that up. Yeah. It's he's got a fantastic filmography. Like there's he has one of my favorite sports movies of all time, which if you consider billiards a sport. The Color of Money.
He did Color of Money?
Yeah, with Paul Newman and Tom Cruise. Yeah.
I did see. I love that movie. I didn't even know that was his.
That's Scorsese.
Wow.
Yeah, like he's like his filmography is deep.
Yeah, The Color of Money is a great movie. I did not know that was his.
He's got a fantasy children's movie called Hugo with Ben Kingsley, and that came out in like 2010. Like it's just he does. It's kind of insane that he's known as the guy who does mob movies because he's just done so much.
Was
stuff.
The Irishman him?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I thought.
We will be covering that next Friday.
there. Can't wait. That's what I've been waiting for. Maybe.
Yeah. Have you ever seen The Irishman?
No, I have not.
That'll be a good one.
Is that the one that was straight to Netflix? That
Yes.
came
Yeah.
out?
Speaking of
cool.
Hoover and the FBI.
Yeah,
and
yes,
all that.
J. Edgar
Yeah.
Hoover, yeah. That's a super cut of a movie there. That's like 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
You know, we got Casino, which was 3 hours. That was 2 hours and 45 minutes, and The Irishman will blow them all out of the water.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But we got Shutter Island in the meantime next week with Leo and Mark Ruffalo, and
Yeah.
that's one of Joey's favorites.
I've never
Shutter
seen
Island.
that. I need to check that one out.
Yada.
I like Shutter Island.
It's a goodie. It's a goodie.
Notice something new every time I watch it. I think this will be my 4th or so watch.
That one's got the nice twist sort of thing going on. It's fascinating. He did an interview recently where he talked about Shutter Island, and I should probably save this for the next episode. But he called it that was his like one for them. You know, like you make a movie for the studio, you make one for yourself, the next one. And the idea that Shutter Island used to be a one for them is like beyond me.
Yeah.
Like it's that's 2010.
It's kind of a Nolan-ish movie. Like
No,
I don't
it
know,
does feel like it would be more Christopher Nolan than
Yeah.
Scorsese, and it's but it works. It really does. So I'm excited to talk about it. But I think with that we will conclude this episode of the Penny Bloom Podcast. If you would, head to patreon.com/PennyBloomPod, where you'll find over 50 hours of exclusive content, including all sorts of book reviews, comic book reviews, movie reviews, and the like. For $3 a month, you can support this podcast financially. And for $1.50, you can get any written reviews that I do. All that money goes into helping me put this podcast on because it costs me money and I don't make any off of it unless it's over there. Head to Twitter, follow at Penny Bloom Pod, follow on Instagram at Penny Bloom Podcast. Remember to leave a 5-star rate and review wherever you might be listening and to continue to download. That is a huge help for us. A very big help. We've had a few great months in a row, and hopefully we're recording a little bit in advance. Hopefully October is on the same pace. We're only 600 downloads shy of my goal for the year, and we're in October. So it's looking like we're going to get there, and I'm very, very happy with that. We'd have to have a terrible couple of months to not get there in comparison to some previous months. But yeah, so thank you everybody who's tuning in. We're going to do it regardless of how many people are listening, but it's nice to know that people are. Remember to support or stand up and support, just tweet about it, whatever you can, to support SAG-AFTRA. People are kind of treating the strikes like they're over because WGA came to an agreement, but the actors are still on strike. They deserve to own their likeness. They deserve to be paid for their work. I think that's only fair. The logic follows for me. I don't know. But yeah, with that, I was Colton Robertson. I was joined by Joseph George. Thank you very much, homie.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Oh, and it's always a pleasure to have you. And thank you, Pops, Justin Robertson.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I hope I didn't jinx anything with the downloads you need.
No.
I love seeing you guys do this and enjoy chopping it up with you guys.
Absolutely. And we hope to have you back sometime soon.
For sure.
But remember, peace, love, and bloom. And when you kill a king, you don't stab him in the dark. You kill him where the entire court can watch him die.